Because in order to elevate to that level that you really want to be, where you really making some money, it has to be elite.
So I did all that by leveraging my personal credit.
And it may be a hard pill for the Black community as a whole to swallow, but the system is not broken. The system is working exactly the way it needs to.
All right, y'all, what's going on? Hello, hello, hello. It is your host with the most, and we are back with another episode of the Wealthy and Healthy podcast. We're going to do something special today. We're going to talk about some things more in depth today. We are starting to transition into the healthy aspect of wealth. So we're going to start talking about what makes people wealthy. How do rich people move? What do you have to start doing in your everyday life to start creating a new environment? How does all this transition into a healthy career? How does all this transition into someone who needs help, right? I always tell people it takes a village to raise a community, but it takes time, right? It takes a village to create a community, and it also takes a community to create an entrepreneur. So we have to start understanding our community more, putting more time into the community, putting more time into each other. So that is why I came with this episode today of the Wealthy and Healthy podcast. I got a very special guest coming on today. We're going to speak on so many different things. But before I introduce her, I want to ask everybody, of course, how was your turkey day? I hope everybody was blessed by the best, and it was all that everybody could, hope it to be, right? And moving into, this new stage of life, moving into this new stage of, we're going through 2025, and it's almost up, y'all. We got about a month left, and I want to know how everybody's transitioning. How is everybody after this government shutdown? What has been moving? What has been shaking for you guys? What's been going on? Give me some things in the comments that you guys want to see from us. But today, we are going to keep things very, very productive. We're going to keep things very educational. And, I definitely wanted to talk to different people in the community. I want to start bringing people on that is actually a part of this community. So my guest that I'm about to bring on, her name is Taja King. She is an author. She is an advocate. She loves to speak about these type of things, and we have actually put a very, very productive conversation together today. So I'm going to actually let her introduce herself, and we're going to start jumping right in, because I believe, I don't want to do too much talking. Like, I want to get straight to what we came to talk about today, right? So I want to introduce everybody to Miss Taja King, and, go ahead, tell us where you're from, Taja. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and let us know where you're calling.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. My name is Taja. I am an author, like you just said. I'm also, stepping into I am very passionate about the things that I love doing. Iron sharpens iron, and I'm all about that, especially in our community. So I grew up military background. My father was in the military, San Antonio, Texas. Shout out to San Antonio. My parents believed in spare the rod, spoil the child. So there was no, talking back and thinking that you were going to just, get away with doing whatever you want to do. What mom and dad says goes. 10 licks, count them out. Military household. So, I'm very passionate about not being so quick to judge based off of what social media and the news and all the powers that be says about our community. Our iron sharpens iron. So I like to sit down and actually get to know the people for themselves. So that's a little bit about me.
I love that. So, Tasha, let me ask you this: like, what are your goals currently, and like, what do you do right now to impact your community? But what are your goals going into just your next stage of entrepreneurship and your next stage in your in your journey, just in your life period?
Awesome. So right now to keep the lights on, I am part-time a substitute teacher. Shout out to primary school. So I do that. My goal is to make sure for me that I start learning more about finances. I was, happy that you hit me up because it's like, yeah, in our community, baby, budgeting, managing, saving money, investing. These are like foreign languages to our community. So
Yes.
I was really happy that you hit me up to to want to speak to me about that. I'm passionate about sitting down with people, trying to help them break free from generational cycles that has caused them to, shut down. And hey, like, I don't know how to reach out and ask for help. Like, what do you mean budget manage and save? Like, all I know is about living on, food stamps and HUD housing, things of that nature. So, I've always had that drive within me to want to help people to understand that just because you were raised in an environment like that doesn't mean that you can't break free from that to break those generational cycles. So that is something I'm passionate about talking to the people about.
I love that you said that. And like you said, it's a foreign language in our community to even want to understand. Excuse my dog. But so
Hmm.
it's she bad. But Um, so let me ask you this, right? Because like we talked about,
Hmm.
like we touched on, it's a foreign language for us to even want to know about finances because we're so used to, I just
Hmm.
got a good job, or I got, my food stamps, I got child support coming in, or I got alimony, all that type of stuff. So what makes us what makes us driven towards that, what attracts us towards that now in this current stage, and then like what made us want to, like, okay, I need to stay on this government assistance, what pushes us to
Well, respectfully but bluntly put, like the system is working exactly the way it should be.
that?
System was never created for the black community to thrive anyway. Hashtag white supremacy. It's still alive and thriving today. So, truthfully, the system wasn't necessarily created for us. Hashtag segregation.
Yes.
If food stamps was created for black people, it wouldn't have existed. This system was, basically created for, white or white passing people. Let me cook on that for a minute. It wasn't for us. However, because per capita, we get talked about the most being on food stamps, HUD housing, this, that, and the third. And the reason being is because I think a lot of people, bluntly but respectfully put, in our community, have this damn if you do, damn if you don't feeling. Every time that person tried to get, you know, somebody higher in command says, hey, this person said or did this, now that person loses a job. The generational cycles within our community. Put a finger up if you know somebody in your family that went to prison and spent most of their life in prison. Taking the fathers out of the household, that
Yes.
doesn't help. Having a mother that doesn't tell you the truth about your biological situation, that doesn't help. It's so much turmoil in our own community. And when we constantly see the algorithm is pushing mothers, single black mothers on food stamps, loudmouth, ghetto rules, it's just as many white women and black men that are single fathers too on food stamps. But this is something that is constantly conditioned in our community. Let's touch on AI real quick. There are AI videos about, black women being on food stamps. She got two or three little kids howling and screaming at the background. I need my food stamps and my baby daddy. Maybe that's AI, but you're pushing that in the algorithm to make how the black community, specifically black single mothers, all mothers are. Now there are some like that, but that's not all of them.
Right.
So our community gets hit the most. You know
Yes.
what I'm saying? And for us to overcome so much to this day, like, we are constantly the poster child for dysfunction. So you have generations growing up on food stamps. Why sit up here and try to get a job, a better job, when I can get food stamps? Some people
Yeah.
just get tired of trying. So let me sit back on food stamps. Let me show you how to, don't put down that you're married. You got a man that work, as a truck driver. Now, don't let them know that you're an RN. Baby, I've seen people fill out applications lying. And it's just, some people have no shame in our community as well. So, it's one of those double-edged swords.
Yeah, and I think that's with a lot of stuff in our community. A lot of it is like, we find ourselves blaming everything on, white supremacy, or and that is a huge part of it. Like you said, it's that double-sided sword. But when we get to that point where we start saying, when do we start taking accountability as the Black community and say, okay, when are we going to stand up and start doing
Mm-hmm.
things differently? So I definitely like that you say that. So let me kind of reshift, right? So what kind of got you into doing substitute work, or what kind of got you into your current career? Like how did you, just to keep the lights on, but how do you keep yourself motivated in that current career?
Well, if I'm honest, I went to school. I was majoring in theater arts, so I have a degree in associates in theater arts. I wanted to do stage makeup, lighting, sound, all of that, all about Broadway. But that's kind of fast paced, fast life. Going back to me for a minute, I'm born with a disability called congenital scoliosis, layman's terms. It's when the spinal cord is not straight. My back is basically shaped like the capital letter S. So, baby, all that moving around and whatnot as you get older, like, look here now, I need to sit
Yeah,
down somewhere. So,
right.
I'm a big kid at heart, baby. SpongeBob SquarePants, you not talking about nothing. Scooby Doo, Powerpuff Girls, you not saying nothing to me, okay? Now they
Okay.
got Bluey in town. It's up from there, okay? So I bond with kids on that. I'm shorter than 5 foot. Don't tell nobody. So like we're eye to eye. We're talking about Paw Patrol, and it like life is good. I get snack time. I get to play in centers. That's really not work to me. So I just love being able to reach out to kids in all seriousness because I know how it feels to be that little kid that was left out, little kid that didn't have money to go to the pizza party because my mom and dad couldn't afford the $5 so I could go to CC's. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
kids begin to be a little bit more comfortable talking to me. And although I have a disability, some kids are bold, like, hey, what's your name? What's wrong with your back? Why you look like that? So, it was easy to start, opening up and talking to kids. Baby, if you know about cartoons, you're in there, at least with the primary kids. And because I have, a duffel bag full of cartoons, baby. Life is good. I can sit down and chop it up with the babies about it. So, I mean, reaching out to kids is what made me want to start opening up more so on beginning to go on a platform and start talking about this because again, in our community, no disrespect to the other, colors of babies out there, but I see the babies in the classroom that he doesn't have a dad. He's acting out in class. Now they're trying to put him on medication because Jamal needs to sit down and he's just obnoxious. No, his daddy's in jail. His mama got into it with his grandma last night. That baby's going through a lot. So
Right.
I have been blessed to be able to pull the babies to the side and actually have like a one-on-one conversation with them. It doesn't always work, but for some of them it does. So that's what really drew me in to continue to be a substitute teacher for the time being.
Okay, I like that. And let me ask you this, like while you're in your substitute teacher and when you got that hat on, what are you thinking about when you're not only impacting these kids, but when you're thinking about shifting into something that not only doesn't pay the bills for, it doesn't pay the bills forever because you always want to shift into something different. But what are your plans for your next career, your next venture, what you got going on?
Oh, awesome question. So for me, I am passionate about being on the stage, having eyeballs on me. I love speaking to a large audience. I have a little background with impromptu speaking when it comes to speech. So that's what I do. That's my thing. So, I love impacting people. And because life be lifing out here, we're
Yeah,
dealing with trauma. There's a lot of people going around smiling, hey, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm fine. No, homie just got finished crying. His or her eyeballs out just 5 minutes
right.
ago in the car. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody's going through something. So if I can reach out and help people, some people are only a chinny chin hair away from, fading to black on somebody. Sad but true. And a lot of this has to do with generational cycles. The traumas that specifically we go through in our community, but people, period. So that's what really has my little fire lit up.
I love that. I love that. And I definitely we gonna circle back because I wanna definitely get into that public speaking thing because that's where like people like you and people like me, we want to be in a bigger impact. So we want to be able to teach at the masses. So I definitely love that
Mm-hmm.
you're ready to get in the field with it. And I definitely I think it's important that people like us start speaking about these things because people need to hear from
Mm-hmm.
regular people. They need to hear from people that, I might remind you of your sister, or of your auntie, or your cousins, and somebody who you might need to hear that from. You might not hear from them, but then you go on and you see this podcast and you're like, okay, things could change for me. So that's really important. So let me shift.
Hmm.
Let me ask you this. What, and you kind of touched on it already, like when you talk about trauma and you talk about generational curses or generational trauma, let me ask you, what was your upbringing and how did that shift into telling me how that molded you and molded your values as, as a young woman and as an older woman now?
Okay, so my upbringing again, military household. So, my mother and father didn't believe in, oh, when they turn 16, because I have siblings too, they can date when they turn 16. No, what you gonna do is graduate, get across this stage, then
Yes,
you can
ma'am.
worry about, dating. We
Right.
ain't gonna be we not like the neighbors down the street or relatives that we're kin to. Not to mention we know about the creepy uncle that you shouldn't be hugging in the
Right.
family. Come on over
Yes.
here and sit down. You know what I'm saying? No, you're not gonna come in the house when the street lights come on. You gonna play in this yard. We're not like the rest of the neighborhood. You
Right.
you over here. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? So that was my upbringing. My parents did not play, us being all over the neighborhood. They were about sparking it butt if need be. And they were the only ones doing it as well. My parents didn't believe in, it takes a village because the village can be messy. A lot of people don't like talking about that. But that's the reason why the village ain't villaging today. Because, Miss Hattie Mae had favorites. She was corporal punishing that child more than this other child. So before we talk about, it takes a village, let's understand the elders who have favoritism. So that's kind of how I grew up. And I didn't grow up with the whole sense of, it takes a village. It's like, no, like my parents are the ones that's going to be, shaping and molding me because we know how the village is. What's done in the house stays in this house. That's the problem. That's the reason why so much toxicity within the community. Because nobody
Yes.
want to talk about what's going on in the house. Mm-hmm.
Mm. That's deep. That's deep. And how did that change you growing up? Like, do you find yourself living like that still to this day, or do you find yourself drawing yourself away from it and trying to make your own values or make your own, your own generational, start your own thing in your own generation?
Well, I find myself going back and looking at before I sit here and just go pointing fingers at what I was raised up, thinking was right. I try to understand why my parents felt that way. Why my mother or father reacted the way that they do. Because if you get caught up in, this whole, for those who feel that way, they hate ABC 1, 2, 3. I believe in God, so I don't believe in hating a person. I hate the sin, not the sinner. So it's like, okay, I know the reason why she grew up being like that or he grew up being like that. So how do I, as a grown woman today in my 30s, say, hey, I grew up like that. That wasn't healthy for me. It wasn't healthy for my parents. But that's that generational cycle. And if somebody is not mature enough to break that cycle, then the cycle continues. So I
Yes.
try my best to eat the meat and throw away the bones and the gristle too.
Oh, there you
That's
go.
what I
Hell,
try to do.
like,
Bars, bars, bars.
I want to touch on that real quick because, me growing up, right? I grew
Hmm.
up by, with a single mom, right? My dad was in
Okay.
prison for a lot of his life.
Hmm.
And we grew up around the gangbanging. We grew up around the drugs. We grew up around the drug dealing. Um, and a lot of it, I did blame when I was coming up, I did blame it a lot on my dad because it was like, I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what a healthy relationship with another, with my father would look like. But at the same time, as I kept growing older, he would always tell me when, we got back into our relationship and we started talking again, he was like, you can't keep blaming me for your life. And then, that was something that we always bumped heads on because it's like, when do we start as adults, right? When do we start saying I can't keep blaming my parents, but when do we take a step back and be like, man, but I kind of can blame you though, because there's so much generational trauma and generational, just hurt there that actually shifts people and changes them and makes them act the way they act throughout their life, or it may make them, turn to certain things. Like when I didn't have a job or when I couldn't figure out how I was going to eat, I wanted to turn to the streets because that was all I knew when I was growing up. So when I got older, it was like that was so hard for me to break away from. And as I got older, I had to take a step back and be like, okay, why am I wanting to keep doing this? So when do we as a community, not just as families, right? When do we as a community say, yes, we are responsible for, it is our elders' responsibility to make sure that the younger generations are put in position. But when do we as the younger generation take time and say, okay, now I gotta roll out my own red carpet, I gotta do my own thing, I gotta lay my own foundation. Right. So how does that, like, how do you balance that? How do you get through that without, how do you keep your head on straight throughout that whole process?
Awesome. You have to watch who you're around. Like for me personally, I'm very big on saying just because somebody is an elder does not mean they're wise. So you
Right.
got to have a good group of elderly people around you. That's numero uno. Okay.
Mm.
And unfortunately for some of us, I can speak personally on myself. Baby, that's a handful, if that. Because a lot of our elders want to sit here in a generation today, baby. Okay, back in 1942, you was
Yes.
down there at the Jew joint. And down Willie Earl and them, okay? They said you was a Jew joint 304. Don't go there. Don't go
Hello.
there, grandma. Don't do that. That's the reason why you don't like running into, people that you grew up with from around the way. You start cutting people off when they talking to you. No, no, Mr. Willie, grandma dude back in 1942. Like, come on. People need to start being honest about what it is that they have done in their life and what they're passing down. You know, I mean, all that. Well, oh, I did the best I could. What did you? You
Right.
didn't even let the child speak. Do as I
Yes.
say, not as I do. Huh? What? Do as I say, not as I do. You sitting up here cussing
Somewhere.
everybody out. Now you mad because that child went to school and cussed
Right.
somebody out that was bullying him? Make
Hmm.
it make sense. Baby,
Right.
iron sharpens iron. And that's not sharpening nobody. So it's a
Mm.
lot of hypocrisy and lack of accountability in our community. So for
Yes.
me, I make sure that I separate myself from people that do not like to take accountability. Yes, I am 36 years old, but I don't care if you are 92 years old. What you're not going to do is talk to me like I'm not a whole grown woman. Okay? That's
Yes,
what we're not
ma'am.
going to do. So it's like, how people don't take accountability. Nobody's perfect. Like people have feelings. Down and actually have your feelings. How do you expect to be able to move forward as a community? You can't. You got to separate. Like, so for me, I make sure I seek out people who can have the uncomfortable conversations. Because a person that can't have a uncomfortable conversation, baby, you're not gonna get nowhere with people like that. You're really not. That's coming from
Nope.
first-hand experience.
Yeah. That's real talk. That's real talk. And we gotta hold people accountable. Like if we get into a situation and sometimes you want to bring people with you, sometimes you want to make sure that people is okay, or you want to bring people into and let them see your vision, but at some point you got to be like, they ain't on the same level, and it's okay that they're not there yet, and it's okay, but we can't keep letting other people bring us down on our way up. And it's okay to leave people behind. And it's okay to be like, I started there, but I'm not going to end there. It's okay that you don't forget where you came from, but you just got to understand where you're going. Because the more you live in the past, the more you're going to end up, just 30 years from now, wondering what you did with yourself. So
Come on, man. Come on.
it's real, and this isn't just for the Black community. This is for every community, every
Mm-hmm.
single person who
Mm-hmm.
knows about generational trauma, because everybody has been through it. Like you said, everybody has a
Come
family
on.
member in the family member who been in prison in and out. He just can't get right. Everybody has that mama, and we all it's things that we got to start saying. Everybody in their family got that mama that lead their kids with everybody else every night and be out partying, and everybody got one of them, and everybody got one of them funny uncles that can't be alone with none of the kids. So we got to start thinking like it's not just okay to just be like, oh, that's them sitting over there in the corner. That's where we see a lot of dysfunction, because no, it's not okay to just let them go sit in the corner. It's not okay to just be like, oh, that's just Willie Earl. No, these are things that we need to start dealing with internally, so that we can be able to help our younger generations, help our older generations heal, because it's all a dysfunction, but it's all like a system. If you can't get the back end, you can't get the front end. So if the older generation is not willing to fix anything, how can you expect the younger generation to come and take that first step? I always used to tell, my elders, when we would go through have these same conversations, right? How are you going to expect me to try and repair a relationship that I didn't mess up? So if you dealing with a situation, like I used to tell my dad, like, you know, I did grow up with a single mom, right? Even when he was in my life, he wasn't really in my life. So we can't sit here and be like, I can't sit here and be like, oh, I gotta go reach out to my father, or I gotta reach out to that homegirl or that homeboy that did me wrong or ran off on me. It's not that easy, and it's not that easy to swallow your pride. But at the same time, we gotta start taking accountability and holding each other accountable. So
Come on,
that's where it starts.
it does. I agree. I agree. And if I
That's
if I
where it
may
starts.
elaborate a
Yeah.
little bit on what you just said, like I mean, I have to touch on the fact of there's not only that creepy uncle in the family, there's creepy women too.
Yes.
There are women that say little boys. You know what I'm saying? And
Yes.
oftentimes little boys get overlooked. Like you know, it's like it is a positive thing when it comes to a little boy sitting up here messing around with a older woman or something like that. Like, but he was 15 and
Yes.
she was 18 or
Right.
22. Like that's not gonna make him a man. That's trauma. And a lot of men, like a lot of the elder men, teach a lot of these little boys that that's what makes him a man. If he sits here and gets into an encounter, if you will, an entanglement, if you will, with a grown woman, it's like that's not making that little boy a man. That's trauma that you're building inside of that man, you know. And like you said, like to be able to sit down with your elders and let them know, like, y'all the ones that have the issue. I wasn't even born yet. So how you expect me to sit up here like you sit up here telling me all of this about my aunt, my uncle, but it's like, wait a minute, I wasn't even born. Y'all need to be sitting down and getting this together because now you don't want me hanging around my cousins. I might need them one day. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? I don't only need a system within my parents. I need the system when it's other people. If we're not on the best of terms, you shouldn't try to cut your kids' blessings. And oftentimes that's what some parents try to do. As a person who comes from a two parent, household, I don't know how it feels to come from a single parent household, but oftentimes in the black community, it's like, oh, well, you came from a two parent household, so you good, girl. Excuse you? Maybe I can speak for myself. Just because I was raised in a two parent household doesn't mean that it was a functioning, healthy household. You know, imagine, like, I'm not saying me necessarily, but I knew kids that came from a two parent household, and I'm gonna whoop your butt when I get home. Then when your daddy get off work, he gonna come home and whoop your butt. I mean, in a single parent household, you only gotta worry about one butt whooping. That
Yep.
child came from two. That's two butt whoopings. So I just think it's just a lot of these conversations within our community that we need to have, but we have to give ourselves a little grace in our community too, because again, we're the poster child for confusion. No other community is on social media, the regular cable, being picked at, being looked at with a magnifying glass as much as our community. So it's twice as hard for us.
Yes. That's real. That's real. So, with that being said, let's take a quick intermission, right? I want to ask everybody this quick question. What do you have to do to start rebuilding the trauma in your family? What can you start doing to make things work? What can you start doing to put that first foot forward? Right? What can you start doing to create a new environment to where people can feel comfortable talking to you, to where people can feel like you're there for the right reasons? And if you aren't there for the right reasons, what's going on in your brain? So how can we start fix it ourselves first before we come in and try to, fix that family dynamic? That's what it starts with, really, in my opinion, right? When I had to, when you got to start figuring things out and you going through life, you got to start reflecting on yourself first and foremost. And then only then can you start to change your life and your family's life, and you're going to start seeing success in your career. You're going to start seeing people noticing you, people giving you your flowers. So I want to ask everybody, what are you going to start doing to create a new type of environment for yourself and your family dynamic? Ask yourself that every single day.
Mm.
Yes. So let's see what we got here. So let me ask you this, right? We talked
Mm-hmm.
about family dynamics, right? We talked a little bit about race, a little bit about that type of thing, right? But I want to ask
Mm-hmm.
you this. What makes a strong woman? What makes a strong woman in this date and time, in this economy, in this life, right? What makes a strong woman?
Well, I'm gonna answer honestly here, okay? This is how I feel about me. Jesus is on the main line. Tell him
Yes.
what you want. That's what makes me a
Man.
strong woman. I'm covered by the blood of the Lamb. So for me, it's all about me connected to God. However, I understand and respect free will. Um, you just have to, you gotta love yourself, man. Like a lot of people struggle with loving themselves, being confident in who they are. I mean, every day when we're on social media, we're seeing people, the Maybach, she slim thick, he got a six pack, old boy 6'5", old girl exotic, or whatever it is. And this is constantly shaping the way we look at ourselves. I remember being the little girl that used to just wish I had, for lack of better words, a bigger chest. Like I was so like, please, God, please, it's all I want for Christmas. So now that social media is a thing, it's like, okay, imagine a baby today looking at all of this. She's only 12, but she wants a body like this 25-year-old woman. Truth be told, she don't even have a body like herself. She paid for it. Don't see no shame, but it is what it is. Same thing with men, paying for the six pack, this, that, and the third. We have to push away from that and start really connecting with ourselves. Get out to nature. You know what I'm saying? Do your pros and cons. Name the things that you like about yourself, the things that you find attractive about yourself. Even if you have to get up and dance around in your drawers, do what's going to make you feel good about yourself. You have to pour into yourself because if you don't pour into yourself with this thing called life out here, baby, as soon as you get on social media, as soon as you get around, co-workers, just the outside world, there's always going to be somebody picking you apart. And you've got to be able to have that sturdy foundation to be able to say that nobody's going to knock me off my square.
Mute. I have myself on mute. That's important. Like, I think it's extremely important for us in the community to not be so, attached to social media and attached to what other people think and other people's opinions. And you got to be able to just be yourself and living your own truth, as they say, and just be able to be okay with that. And there's nothing wrong with you. And if anybody said that there was something wrong with you, there's something wrong with them, because hurt people, and we've all heard it before. So we got to start, building each other up instead of breaking each other down, right? You don't need to. And another thing I want to point out real quick is, don't let your kids, like, and I don't have kids, right? But here's the thing. I do know what's right and what's wrong. And I think it's extremely important for us to bring this up. I don't like the fact that kids can go through sex changes so young. I
Ooh, come on now.
I don't like
Come
the
on.
aspect of it. I don't like the uncertainty that it brings. I don't like the
Come on.
health aspects that it brings, the health risk that it brings.
Yes.
And I think that all that kind of ties back into what we were just talking about. Why do kids think they need to have that? Why is that something that we need to push on our young generation? Why do kids think that it's so important for them to go through a sex change and do it so young? Because once you get older and you start to speak to these older transgender women or transgender men, they regret it, and they're still dealing with the repercussions of it and the pain that comes with. So when we talk about respecting yourself and what it become like, how to be a strong woman, I think it comes down to how to be a strong human being and how to be able to understand, like, God put you here and he gave you what he gave you. And whatever he gave you, he gave you because it's yours and because you need it and because you're supposed to impact somebody with the gifts that God gave you. So once we start understanding that, and I want to touch on that here in a minute, and how the fact that God has been taken out of the homes is a big reason why this has happened. We gonna touch on that in a minute, but I really want to talk about this really quick, right? And just touch on the fact that it's important for us to stop breaking each other down and start building each other up in the aspect of, we need God in our lives, we need our parents in our lives, we need our elders in our life, we need our family in our life. So that's where we got to start shifting things, right? Taja, we gonna pause this real quick, right? Resume it. Okay. So let me ask you this, right? How important is it how important is the community to the individual? Like, I want to do a quick shift, right? A big shift. Like, how important is it for an entrepreneur to have his or her community behind them? How important is that to their success?
It's extremely important. For me personally, I am blessed to be able to have myself a life coach. Shout out to Mr. Brown. So you definitely need somebody that's seasoned, if you will. There's nothing like in our community, especially, and I'm pretty sure it exists in other communities as well. But I can only talk about my own firsthand experience. You can't be taking millionaire advice from people making minimum wage. What you need to do with the money is like you don't even have it yourself. So you need to be around people that are financially well to do, thriving in their business, you know, and able to actually give you the foundation that you need to keep your business up and running. Connect you to different people. Iron sharpens iron. And you cannot do that with a bunch of people sitting around pipe dream. I'm just gonna be honest. It's easy to talk a good game, but when it comes to putting feet to pavement, like baby, we need to make sure that we're around people who actually have the business, can show you the layout, their accolades, so on and so forth. You have to be around people who are business driven like you. Because if you're hanging around people who like to be lazy, a lazy person is just going to rub that off on you. God said bad company corrupts good moral behavior. You have to be around people who are, entrepreneurial minded. You can't, I mean, the opposite of that, sitting around talking to people who don't even want to get up and go to work, you're not going to get anywhere with a conversation like that. If anything, it's going to be a whole lot of jealousy, a whole lot of negativity that you're telling you about your business not being able to blossom or work in its entirety.
Yep. That's I love that outlook on it, because when we start talking about the individual, we have to talk about the community, because our communities, right, especially in the Black community, we don't talk about entrepreneurship. We don't talk about how to build it up, how to build things up. We don't talk about life insurance. We don't talk about,
Mm-hmm.
what we gonna do when grandma goes and who's gonna get the house. That's the type of thing that happens
Come
when,
on.
when it actually happens. So how
Mm.
how is like how do we start to shift into saying, how as a Black community, how is Black families, and I'm not just talking about your mama and them, I'm talking about the people who you say hello to on your way to work, the people whose businesses you invest in when you're out and about, the local businesses that you invest in. How do we as a community start empowering the entrepreneur? How does that work?
For me personally, I think it's about, it's enough with the talking. Let's start putting feet to pavement. Anybody can sit back and talk a good game. Like, come on, put your money where your mouth is. Baby, if you can afford to buy a pair of Louboutins, okay? You can afford to buy Prada, Gucci, Birkin. Why can't you invest that into a Black business? Why not? I mean, the only thing you're doing is making another community of people rich. And some of these same people do not like Black people, or should I say people of color. It is what it is. Balenciaga being one of the most, you know, talked about, designer companies that has had a lot of negativity to say about the Black community. Start putting your money within your own people. Like, it makes no sense with the women who wear weave. No tea, no shade. You go buy weave from the Chinese, Asian, Korean, like, But oh, girl down the street, she has a well because you don't like her, you're jealous of her. There's a lot of jealousy within our community too. Let me have to be, honest about that. A lot
Right.
of black people, will spend money with somebody because baby, I don't like you. Oh, she light skinned. Oh, she mixed. Oh, I don't like the fact that she mixed. So I'd rather go spend my money over here. It's a lot of jealousy within our community. But we have to think about it. It goes all the way back to racism. Slavery days. You got the house, part A or ER versus
Yep.
the field ER.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So because you're lighter in complexion, oh, you think you better than me. So with our community, unfortunately, it's not that just the black community just going around doing it just to do it. No, we have a historical root. And if we can't get to the bottom of that within our community, unfortunately, we will never be able to thrive. So it needs to be more people actually speaking about this. And not only that, but literally putting feet to pavement.
Yep. And that's where it starts. I want to kind of elaborate on that just really quick too. I think a lot of it has to
Mm-hmm.
do with the like you said, going back to slavery and the value that we put on ourselves. We'll go buy a $3,000 wig from the Chinese lady and then go to the hood and get it done. How does that work? How does that work? And then the girl who get the money from getting their hair paid or doing that person's hair, she gonna go to the grocery store and buy all the unhealthy snacks for her kids, or she gonna go spend it on getting, some things that ain't gonna help our community, or she might go spend it on that Netflix, that Netflix subscription or whatever that looks like. But I think a lot of it goes back to the value that we bring on our communities. We think that we're not good enough to be able to spend $3,000. If Walmart tells you that that's what that's worth, you're gonna 100% go pay Walmart. But we don't put the same value on our black communities and our black businesses. So I think a lot of that stems back to, like you said, generational slavery, that slavery mentality is what we're touching on. That mentality that we are just the house, excuse my language, or the field, that type of thing. And we don't put that enough value on
Mm-hmm.
ourselves so where we can even feel like we're worthy of having a business, or somebody that we know, we don't think that they're worth spending our money with. So I think a lot of that goes back down to the value that we put into our communities, because you're only going to spend your money where you think you need it. So if we don't think we need our black communities, we're not going to spend our money there. We're not going to invest into that. So let's kind of like dive into that a little bit deeper, right? How do those past voids impact our present communities? How has those past voids of not understanding our worth as black people, understanding our place as black people in entrepreneurship or in culture period, like we've seen it all. We've seen the way that we've shaped sports. We've seen the way that we've shaped entertainment. We've seen the way that we've shaped all the educational fields, because everything that we do, we seem to be able to do it with a little bit of more sauce, right? Or we do it with a little bit more culture. So what has those past voids, like how do those past voids of not understanding that impacted our present communities and our present entrepreneurs and just our present youth? Like how has it impacted the way things are going for us right
Well, to me, I see a lot of people are beginning to wake up to, a lot of our history being erased. Like we have to think about, we live in a colonized environment. So, a lot of black people, even my age and older, they have no idea about certain history. Like, oh, black people have always been poor. No, we had our own community.
now? Right.
Tulsa, something or another. Excuse me, the name escapes me. But our own town, Black Wall Street. We've had
Yes.
these things, but when it was destroyed, I mean, that'll knock the wind out of anybody, baby. We are the only community of people that have that much of an effect. I'm not dogging or dissing anybody else's community, but I'm focusing on us because it's like black people, we always have to be inclusive of everybody else. But
Yes.
who's inclusive of us? So
Right.
focusing on us right now, like we've had this before, but it was stripped from us. Yes, there's always going to be somebody benefiting from us, but we have got to start teaching the history. We've got to start teaching it. And we have to start teaching it in a way where you're unapologetically, confident and okay with saying it. Like sitting around at the table, oh, Southern cooking, baby, that's not Southern cooking. Chitlins and black eyed peas and cornbread and hog, baby, that's not Southern cooking. That's soul
Uh,
food. But
yes.
see, somebody's always gonna put their little sauce on it. It's Southern cooking. No, baby, that's slavery cooking. We have to start
Yes.
telling our kids that. We
Yes.
don't know our history. Heck, some of us as adults don't even know our own history. Shout out
Right.
to Instagram because I'm learning things and I'm going to Chat GBT and Google and make is this the truth? Did this happen back in? Come on, man. Like
Yes.
that's the problem in our community. We don't know our history. When we start
Mm.
to learn more about our history, we'll get more of a bit taste in our mouth about being a part of everybody else's team. Baby, you only
Mm.
benefiting from me. You get the cream of the crop on the top. I get all the sticky mess down there at the bottom. Uh-uh.
Right.
So we have to start educating ourselves in our community. That's what's missing. But I see that people are beginning to kind of wake up, and that's the positive thing.
Yep. It's called gentrification, people. We have been we have been bamboozled. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock.
Would
Plymouth Rock
we?
landed on us. Okay, so
Come on.
this is extremely important. Like when we understand that we did come from something. We are not built or we're not tied to our American history as much as we are tied to our ancestors and the people who actually came from us. So as much as and I love America, I'm proud. I'm a proud American. Don't get me wrong, but do I understand my heritage? Do I understand where I came from? 100%. Do I want to learn more about my ancestors and how we came to this country and things like that? Yes, because I feel like it'll change me differently. I actually just started reading this book. It's one of Dick Gregory's books. I don't know if you heard of Dick Gregory, but when we
Hmm.
start talking about, we might have to do a review on this book when I'm done finishing it because I'm almost done. But when we start talking about generational trauma, when we start talking about how slavery is still impacting us to this day, we can start to see okay where this is where the void is coming from. This is the void that we need to fill because if we don't know where we're from, how are we going to know where we're going? How are we going to know how to empower a black community when we haven't never been empowered by a black community? We're being empowered by white communities. We're being empowered. We should not need that's why I agreed with Lil Wayne when he said black matters lives or black lives matters doesn't matter because everybody matters. But we should not be looking for white communities or Hispanic communities to tell us that black lives matter. We should not be creating movements. We as a community, and every time that we wake up and we live in our spirit, we should be the movement. We are the movement. We are the crowd. We are the culture. So I think that's important. So let me shift again, right? How do you think the youth is being being affected by this? Because like you say, you work with younger kids, you work with children, you work with you work around these type of things, and you see how how much children are really impacted in their younger years. So how do you think that this generational trauma, generational poverty, and those generational beliefs are impacting the youth and children, and how does that change someone's life? Like how does it work?
Well, because I work with these babies, a lot of these babies are so angry, so angry. And then you have the other half of babies who are sitting here, singing every sexy red Cardi B song. I had to get on one little girl, having her little tongue out with the little Meg the Stallion ass. And I'm like, if you don't put your little tongue back in your mouth,
Yes.
you only 7 or 8 years old. I don't
Mm,
know what mama and daddy let you do at the house, but while you in this classroom, you're going to act like a little 6 or 7 year old little girl. Put your little tongue back in your mouth.
right.
So you touched on this earlier, like social media. These babies are constantly watching all this negativity, but she's over there, he's over there, he's quiet, he fine, she fine. So, out of sight, out of mind. No, you have to watch what your kids are watching. It's like we talked about it in our meeting, the pop balloon thing or whatever, little pop balloon show. Watching stuff like you're in the second grade. What do you know about this show? You shouldn't even be watching this show.
Exactly.
So a
Exactly.
lot of our kids are being conditioned by that instead of, hey, let's sit her down and talk to her about, the woman who actually was the first black woman to sit, you know, in the front seat of the bus because they spin the narrative to say that it was Rosa Parks, but it was actually somebody else. Her name
Right.
escapes me right now. You know, start telling these babies our history. Start telling them
Yes.
to get outside and play. Get out
Yes.
of grown folks' mind.
Right.
And then the grown folks, stop sitting around gossiping. Spend your
Mm.
time sitting down with a checkbook. Okay, I can afford to turn off Netflix. I don't have to buy those Jordan shoes next month that I was saving up for. I need to be getting that alternator fixed on that car. Like responsibilities. Sit down and actually have a one-on-one with your kids. You don't need another wig. You need to learn how to work with your natural hair because
Yes.
that wig is pulling your edges out. Your hair is beautiful. I understand you had a grandmother that was always calling you nappy headed. Now you're passing the same mess down to your little girl. Now you're
Yes.
calling her nappy headed. Iron sharpens iron, and little boys too. So we just need to start educating ourselves more so in our community. But here's the thing: a lot of people don't want it. What J. Cole
Ah,
say? She don't want to be saved. Don't save. Don't
yeah.
save her. A lot of people don't want to be saved.
Right.
So sometimes you gotta watch your hands up.
Yep.
I mean, you can only help people who are willing to do the work, and
Right.
unfortunately, that's not a lot of people.
Yep. Ooh, ooh, I like that, and you kind of said you kind of said everything that I was gonna say. I think only thing I want to touch on really quick is
Hmm.
we, like you said, we don't need another weed. We also don't need no more PlayStations. We don't need no more public schools. We don't need no more Jordans. Like you said, we don't need no more Pockies at the store. We don't need that. You know what we need? We need education. We need coaches. We need advocates. We need people who are willing to say what needs to be said. And I want to encourage you, parents, right? Like I said, I'm not a parent, but I do. I can speak as a child who who, if I had certain things, I would be different, right? Or I wouldn't know. I won't say that. I'll say I wouldn't have had a lot of guessing work, and I wouldn't have had to go through certain things. Understand? I would have understood things a little bit differently. And that helps a young child when because like you said, a lot of these babies is angry, but a lot of these kids are also confused. They also don't know what they want and they're just trying to figure it out and they would rather go through things instead of someone telling like everything that I went through my parents told me. They told me it was going to happen. But once I started to actually get into life, I was like, I'm going to go through it myself and then we'll see what happens, right? But here's what I'll challenge some of you parents to start doing. Not only, like you said, sit down with your kids and start educating them a little bit more. Tell your kids that they beautiful. Tell your son that he's smart. Tell your son that, he is a king. Tell your daughter that she's beautiful so she don't have to go out and hear from somebody else, right? Um Another thing I wanted to say was it's really important, and this is a lot of thing, right? I think this is the big aspect of it. This is the big picture. Us in the Black community, we would rather be that self-made person, the one who came up and did it ourselves, and came back to, excuse my language, came back to shit on everybody. But what, like, look at where it's getting us, right? This is the bigger picture. Stop being afraid to collaborate with people. Stop being afraid to be vulnerable. Stop being afraid to tell people that you need help. And things are going to start coming together, right? Um, with that being said, right, let me ask you this, Taja.
Hmm.
What's worse, right? Generational trauma or generational bias? Like, is it worse to have generational trauma and pass it on to your kids, or have generational bias and not teach them any better because you didn't know any better, or even encourage them to do any different? What's worse in the aspect of a successful, not even a successful, a operational, a human being who has, just things going on, but they know their worth. You can go through things, but you always fall back on your values. But what's worse, that generational trauma or that generational bias?
I think both can be detrimental to your mental, spiritual, and physical health, and even financial.
Right.
Because like you just said it earlier, hurt people hurt people. Okay, if your mom or your dad is dealing with still having flashbacks from being abused as a child, and now they're doing the same thing to their child, and it's like, okay, that parent has to understand that, baby, you need to go get help because you're
Right.
bleeding onto your kids. You know, I understand the trauma that you went through when you were a child. You're still being affected by it, but if you don't go get help, like you said, being vulnerable, reaching out to get that help, you're going to continue to bleed onto your kids. Generational cycles will continue, If you don't acknowledge the fact that, hey, what am I doing to other people to continue this cycle? You have to be able to, hold yourself accountable. I will gladly say, like, hey, for me, I'm not the best child. I know that there are things that I've said and I've done to not only my parents, siblings, so on and so forth. I am not perfect. And to acknowledge that, that's the beginning. You have to
Right.
acknowledge it and start taking those steps to change for the better because nobody is perfect. It's easy to sit up here and, oh, well, I wouldn't have did, and, that's a red flag. It's easy to say that, but people are forever changing. Life is always changing. You could get hurt on a job tomorrow, and now you can't, the dream job you had is being, I don't know, a freaking, track star. Well, you're in a wheelchair now. So good luck with that. That can, hurt somebody to their soul. Now that person is bleeding on everybody else because, hey, their dream got, ripped away from them. You grew up hearing somebody saying that you weren't going to amount to anything. And then what winds up happening? Your dream gets stripped from you. But it's not because you couldn't amount to anything. Stuff happens in life. And we
Right.
have got to be able to have those those exercises, those bulletin points to be able to refer back to when life be life. That
Yep.
way we won't continue to bleed on other people.
Yep. Let me ask you this. Um how important are two-parent households nowadays?
Oh, extremely. As a woman who believes in God, like that's how God intended for it to be. A man and a woman. No tea, no shade to the LGBTQ plus community. He said a man and a woman in the household. But it's not enough to just have a man and a woman in the household. If it's dysfunctional, heavy on dysfunctional, God didn't say anything about being a dysfunctional household with a man and a woman. That's the reason why we have so many single parent households.
Right.
God is not saying for any man or woman, or I should say woman or man, to stay with a partner that's going to continue to be abusive physically, you know, mentally, spiritually. If you can't be in a two parent household, because everybody can't, try to have that community around you that's going to help you. Because a woman cannot teach a little boy how to be a man.
Right.
She cannot. So she needs to find, men who are mature minded that can help her raise that little boy into a boy, into
Yeah.
a man, excuse me, And the same thing can be said about, excuse me, the dad to take care of little girls because they are out there, girl dads. You need to find a community of women, not
Yeah.
the ones who are promiscuous, not the one that if he want to get with you, tell him what can he do for a light bill. Like no, not one of them.
Right.
We're gonna get her around, some good level headed women. I mean,
Right.
and that may not be your mama. It may not be your grandma. You may have to go outside of your family circle. Sometimes it's like that. So that helps.
And that's okay. That's okay. That's
Hmm.
It's okay to have that community around you. And you know, I like the fact that you said it's like how important it is because it's important when we talk about this thing that I like to call structure. When we talk about structure, that comes with a lot of things, right? Parents have to be able to respect each other. Parents have to be able to let the kids know who's the boss, who's running things, who's paying the bills, and what their role is. And that kind of creates a level of respect. In a child, right? It creates a level of structure. If I grew up a certain way and my mom told me like, I knew that at 8 o'clock it was time to brush my teeth, take a bath, and get ready for bed. That creates a certain type of structure for me when I grow up. Now if I grow up and we just doing whatever, you just got to ask mama, she just got to know the parents and y'all can go. That's a little different, you know what I mean? So that's where, that's why I asked, like, how important is it to have a two parent household? And that kind of leads me into my next question, right? What happened to respecting our elders, and how has that impacted what we got going on? How has that impacted how we respect each other nowadays? Yeah, it's getting a little hot in here. Getting a little hot. Like, what happened to that, and how has it impacted us? Like, is it impacted us in a good way or in a bad way?
I'm gonna pull this like the elders used to do when I was growing up. Let me tell you something. Okay, this is what happened. Okay, bluntly said, a lot of our elders are full of it.
Yeah.
A lot of our elders are trying to take things to the grave. You can't be sitting up here telling somebody to give you respect and you're not willing to give it.
Right.
Okay? Like you raised these children up with favoritism. Yes, you did. You don't want to acknowledge it. And you think just because this man is 20 something years old that he forgot about being that 5 year old, that you didn't give him $1 to go around the corner to go get an icy cup or cool cup, however you say it, wherever everybody's from, called an icy cup where I'm from. But you got your other two grandkids, 50 cents to go get a icy cup. Because you have favoritism within your grandkids, but you thought he forgot about that. Let's talk about the elders who really had favoritism. So you can't be expecting people to respect you when you spend all of your time not respecting their child. Children need respect too. God
Yeah.
created children too. Babies need to be respected. She has a heart. He has a heart. They have feelings. To constantly sit up here and yelling and screaming, that's going to stick with that child. Baby, I'm 36 years old. And there are times when I can sit here and think about being that 10-year-old little girl, having a mother or father say something, rude to me, or my grandmother. And that's sticking with me, and I'm 36 today. Like these things will happen. So it takes respect to get respect. It's not
Yep.
enough to sit up here and over respect your elders, baby. Let's respect each other,
Yes.
including children. That's how that works.
Mm.
Because again, a lot of our elders, excuse me, are trying to take things to their graves. They're trying to, Papa was a Rolling Stone, so was Grandma. Okay,
Yep.
well, Grandma
Yep.
was messing around with the milkman. You wonder why that uncle look a little bit more light skinned than all the other chocolatey uncles in the family. She trying to
Right.
take him to the grave, and your
Yep.
grandfather know that he's not, that one's biological father. I mean,
Right.
this stuff happens in our community. But oh, grandmother is such a woman of God, yeah. But before she gave her life to God, she gave her life to them streets back in 1942. But she don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about her older daughter that's really promiscuous and the son that can't keep a job. But wait a minute, you were the same way when you were their age, but you don't want to talk about it. This is the reason why, all this, not a lot of the elders are not being respected. Baby, y'all don't want to get nobody respect. Fuck that tea. We're
Yep.
grown now, baby. We are grown. Team millennial right here. We are grown. And then the Gen Zers who are younger adults, we're grown, baby. A lot of us are taking the time to separate from people who did not, you know, pour into us as a child. We were scared to say it then. A lot of
Yep.
us would get our butts beat, get
Yeah.
slapped in the mouth. Go out there and get that switch. Like you
Yep.
telling me don't get my own butt whooping. For real?
Right.
Go get a switch. Now thankfully I never had to do it, but still, you know, you do as I say, not as I do. Nah, don't be sitting up and trying to talk to me like I'm trying to talk to you. But every time I try to explain myself to you, you're attacking me like I'm wrong. How the heck do you think I'm supposed to have a sense of understanding and confidence within myself? That's the
Right.
reason why so many people get out here in the world drinking and smoking and hey, never mind trying to become something in life because mama said I wasn't gonna be nothing. Daddy said I wasn't gonna be nothing. This is how we get here. This is how we get kids not showing up to Thanksgiving, yesterday. I hadn't seen her in 3 or 4 years. And you're not gonna see her. You're not gonna
Right.
see him. As long as you continue to be disrespectful. You don't want to acknowledge the fact that as an elder, you are very disrespectful. You're very ugly to people. And simply put, a lot of people are getting tired. So shout out to the younger adults that are standing 10 toes down on that alone. And you can do so with loving and forgiving. But
Yeah.
forgiveness doesn't call for reconciliation. Hello.
Yes. Yep. And another thing about forgiveness doesn't mean that it's okay. Forgiveness does not mean that, and I always tell people, time is not an apology. You don't get to wait till Thanksgiving and try and give me a hug. And a lot of people can't fake it. I'm not one to be like, right. I'm not one to be like, oh, it's Thanksgiving. Let's just, pull it together. No, I'm gonna say something. So I think a lot of people, and another thing is a lot of people nowadays, they aren't just willing to run off of just respect alone because back in the day you was just I'm your mom, you would hear that just off of the strength, just off the strength of that being your mother or your grandmother, you not gonna say nothing. And now it's like people getting a little bit of act right, and they're not willing to let things be swept under the rug anymore, and they really taking that rug, baby, and they shaking it because people is getting tired. So if right, so to kind of like elaborate on that, like when we talk about the elders, we have to understand what has been transpiring over the years and how these things have changed, right? I grew up with my mom and only my mama. Now, as I get older, my grandmother's in a different space. I could speak to her about certain things and we could talk about certain things. But back then, when she was ripping and running, baby, I couldn't do much for with that situation. So another thing we have to do is like we talked about forgiveness a little bit. You have to be able to, we talked about this earlier as well, putting yourself in other people's shoes and understanding like, life does happen to a lot of people. And some people don't want to bring that into their household. Some people don't have the strength to be able to get through it or don't have the strength to be able to speak on it. So that's where, we get to, okay, now we have to not only move off of respect, but try and move off of some type of healing. And that's really important. And especially in our Black communities, we are more focused on what we can distribute versus what we can contribute. We are more focused on what we can bring to the table that's going to make us, that's going to be beneficial to us, but not what we can contribute to the team. That's where we start to, see a lot of dysfunction. And like I said, that word that I like to use a lot is called structure. If there is no structure, there's no plan. And if there's no plan, everybody running around with chickens with their head cut off. So
Mhm.
that's really important when we talk about the elders, and it has impacted the community. Let me ask you this, right? How do you feel about this government shutdown? Because I know everybody was waiting for us to talk about it. They was waiting. It was waiting. So we're gonna give y'all what y'all want. So I want to know, how did you feel about the government shutdown? How did it affect you? How did it affect your community? And what are you doing after the shutdown? What has changed? What didn't change?
Check my, all right. Make sure my blood pressure. All right. This is how I feel about the situation. Okay. I did not like the narrative that was twisted around it. The focus was only on the Black community. Or was I the only one saying that? Everything that had to do with some type of government shutdown, especially SNAP EBT, the, the went right on Black people. It's like, excuse us? So Black people are the only ones that's on food stamps now. Like,
Right.
it's the microaggression behind it as well. Automatically, if you live in HUD housing, the projects, you have to be on everything underneath the sun when it comes to being on government assistance. Like, no,
Right.
I qualify for HUD housing, but I don't qualify for food stamps. I make $200 or $300 over. I can't apply for food stamps. So let's be
Right.
clear. Just because you're on one aspect of it doesn't mean you're on the other. Also
Mm,
the narrative is like, hey, if you're on food stamps, you don't have a job. Excuse you?
I hear
You
that
know
too
how many
much.
people are working that still need food stamps? Like, that's the thing, like in real life. And then, when it comes to the essential workers, so you expect people to go to work and not get paid. So that man had to drive to work, not getting paid. That woman had to drive to work, not getting paid. Some of these people live in major cities. So it's going to take them 35, 45 plus minutes, give or take the traffic, of course, to get to their job. That's gas money, bro. They didn't have the money to put, gas in the car, or even people who ride the bus. You need bus fare money.
Yep.
He didn't get paid last week. He or she has a baby. They need diapers. That baby has a school event going on. They need only $5. $5? He couldn't afford to give his son or daughter $5 for that event that they had due to the government shutdown. It's sad because all I see is the rich getting rich and then telling other people pull themselves up by their bootstraps. That's what I saw.
Yeah. And I'm gonna kind of shift, right? Because I'm gonna tell you what I saw. I saw a lot of people scrambling. Saw a lot of people uncertain. I saw a lot of people panicking. And here's what I wanted to tell people, right? Like you said, you spoke on one aspect of it, needing that. Like single moms, they need to have food stamps. They need government assistance. Single parents, single grandparents. people who cannot afford, who might have they taking care of their sister kids and they taking care of their kids, or there people who have lives out here and they need assistance. And isn't that what the government is for, right? So here's what I saw, right? I saw a lot of people trying to depend on a government that does not have our best interests at heart. Like you said, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And it all happens to be because of this thing that we call money. And when we talk about the way money works and the way money moves, right? We as a community, we have to start empowering ourselves financially. We talked about education, but now we got to start talking about finances. The government shutdown hurt so many people. People like still to this day are, still trying to figure out, okay, yeah, some people didn't have the money for Thanksgiving. Some people usually who do these big, huge Thanksgivings can feed up to 20, 30 people. That grandma could come over, auntie and her kids could come over. Everybody used to come be able to get a plate. Now they can't do that. So not only are we not seeing like, okay, the government is trying to control us in another aspect because the money was there. We're not going to sit here and act like the government doesn't print money for a living. But what we do have to understand is never let somebody control you like that. Never let a government shutdown, be the reason why your kids don't eat. So that's why I have to start telling people get into entrepreneurship. It is never too late to start investing in yourself and investing in something to better yourself and to help your family. That's like I grew up on food stamps, right? My a lot of my family members still on food stamps and housing still to this day. But what I had to realize is okay, you can't pull yourself up from the bootstraps. But what we can do is we can take small steps and we can start investing into each other and investing into an idea and investing into a business, investing into credit, investing into healthcare, investing into insurance to be able to have that structure. Like I said, having that structure in that family household is what can keep us from not being so affected by another government shutdown. And like you said,
Hmm.
people weren't getting paid. People had their money held up. People were going to work and not getting their money. People who needed to pay their rent were like, okay, do I pay my rent or do we eat? That's a hard thing to put on somebody. And when people get into these, it's all about the mindset. I always tell people either you are rich in, like you're rich, being rich or poor has nothing to do with your bank account. It has something to do with your mindset. Okay. So if you are poor in the mind, that government shutdown, that just took your whole life away from you. Now what are you going to do now? That's what I want to ask people, right? So I kind of wanted to elaborate on that. Like, what are you going to do with this government shutdown? How has that affected you? And if it did affect you, how are you going to make sure that that doesn't happen again? So I just kind of wanted to touch on that really quick. But mm, let me ask you this,
If I
right?
may, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I may, I also want to add too. This was a humbling experience for some people because some people with the little,
Yes.
well, I'm good over here, no matter the race, creed, or color. Now you got your butt standing in a food bank line. Now I don't feel
Mm-hmm.
too good, do it? But you was
Yep.
always on your little social media, picking at relatives that were on food stamps. But now you standing in line waiting on a box of food. Don't feel too good. So on that same hand, yes, this was bad for a lot of people. It was, but to a decent extent, this was a humbling experience for some people that always like to sit around and talk about other people who are on SNAP food benefits and government
Yes.
assistance and all of that now, but you're depending on assistance. Doesn't feel too good. You're working your butt off. Welcome to how these people feel. So that's what I want to say as well.
That I like that you said that because that's important. People need to be humbled a little bit when it comes to what people are actually going through in real life. It's not easy to it's not easy to wake up every morning as a single mom. It's not easy to wake up every morning just trying to figure it out. It's not easy to wake up every morning as a black man in America. But
Come on.
we have to we have to understand that and we have to put ourselves in people's shoes and we have to be a little bit more compassionate about what people are going through because that's what like whoever's once was first, I think that's how they say it. Whoever was first is going to be last sooner or later, right? So just understand like people go through things. Sometimes people are ashamed that they might have to do certain things because they're not used to doing things, doing things that way. Like you said, that person is ashamed that they got to go stand in that food bank. They ain't never had to do this before. But guess what? You got humbled and now
Mm-hmm.
you know what to do. You know how you're never going to get in that situation again. So I think
Mm-hmm.
and I think that I say that to say I think that government shutdown was really an experiment to see what the American people were going to do if they switch things up. And I'm real into politics, so I think that drastic times calls for drastic measures. So I think we got to start understanding that things are about to start changing. We are about to be in a drop. I believe we're in a mini recession right now, and people got to start getting it together. People got to start getting it together. People got to start, listening to things more. They got to start doing their homework, doing their due diligence, and we got to stop, thinking that the government is going to save us. They not. They not. That Medicaid, you only get it for so long. And housing, some of that housing, baby, you got to pay that back. So, um, I think it's real important. And that kind of shifts me into this, right? What about
Mm-hmm.
how do you feel about inflation? How does inflation, when we talk about, how does that affect our communities, the urban communities, the poor communities, just to get affordable health care, just to get insurance, Medicaid? And how has it affected the way that we feed ourselves, the way that we have access to healthy food, healthy resources, healthy education, healthy relationships? What do you like? What's your take on that? How you feel about
Well, again, we are the poster child for confusion. So we are constantly in the media being painted as the bad guy. You know, we don't want to work. We want to sit up on welfare. All we want to do is eat hot pockets and fried chicken and Takis all day. Education. You have to be able to feed your mind. You have to educate yourself. Unfortunately, like some people live in food deserts, though. So it's not as easy to sit up here and get to a what do they call it? Like buying organic food. Yeah, and organic food costs a cute little coin too. And
this?
if you don't have that money, then how can you afford that? Number one, you live in a food desert. So good luck getting the transportation to even get to the store to begin with. And then the store nearest you, it's the dollar store. And if anybody knows a thing or two
Yes.
about the dollar store, that's number processed food. Some
Yes.
dollar stores are just finally, at least in my area, I'm in good old Texas, howdy partner. You know, um, they're just now beginning to get, a produce section. Just now. So that you have to keep that in mind. You know, when it comes to what was the other part you just asked me? I'm getting old, baby.
When we talk about how about insurance? How do you feel about healthcare and education as well?
Well, first thing first, you have to educate yourself on it. A lot of
Yeah.
people have no idea what to turn to. Insurance on what? So you mean
Yeah.
to tell me I can get insurance on that? A lot of us don't even know it. If I'm quite honest, that's still something I'm learning at this big age. Oh, I can get insurance on it. Oh, I didn't know that. I'm looking on your page, looking at information. Since we done linked up, like we have to start learning this stuff within our community, and sometimes it can be overwhelming for us because it's like, hey, did nobody ever teach me that? What does that mean? What you mean I can get insurance on that? So I can get a burial plot and start paying just $50 or whatever. Like, nobody knows when it comes to, the health plans that we can get. How do you know what health plan to get when you've been on Medicaid all your life? You've been having somebody else handle it for you all your life.
Right.
You don't know. So you have to be able to seek the information, educate yourself on it. And unfortunately, when it comes to our community, we are the least likely to know because even when we do look for the information, sad to say, but true, you could be talking to a doctor or a nurse or the assistant at the front desk that doesn't want to give you the proper information. We
True.
don't always get treated the best at the front desk. I
Yeah.
mean, it is what it is. Certain information, well, I didn't know. Well, she should have told you, but she didn't. So, that's something else we have to think about in our community too. A lot of information is not given to us. So, you have to be able to find people who actually they did the work to find the information. So that's the reason why people like you are so necessary when it comes to that in our community.
Right. Let me ask you this: Do you think that um I'm trying to find the word. Do you think that it's intentional that we are not provided with these resources? Do you think it's intentional that public schools only get a certain level of education, or we're only able to get Medicaid? Do you think it's intentional, or do you think it's just like it's a product of the game? It's just how it works.
It's intentional. The machine is running exactly the way it's supposed to against the black community. And it may be a hard pill for the black community as a whole to swallow, but the system is not broken. The system is working exactly the way it needs to. Let's keep on pumping more information about, women in rap culture, you know, being glorified prostitutes. Now you got little girls sitting up here with their little tongues out, grabbing their little knees and stuff. You're conditioning younger minds. Let's tell the little boys it's okay to sit up here. No tea, no shade. I believe in God. He can sit up here at the age of 12 and want to, be a little girl if he wants to. And his mom and dad can go and get him the sex changing surgery. It's okay
Right.
to keep on pushing these negative things, especially in our community. Yeah, because they profit off of it. Why would I want the black community to fix itself when I profit off of your downfall?
Yeah.
Of course, the lady that needs to, she's about to have her baby. I don't care. I want this woman to flatline because we want to take her organs. I don't know. There was some circulating about a black lady that had been in a hospital for like
I heard about
a
that.
month or so, and they're just now finding her and took her organs. I'm sorry, that still goes on with us to this day. That's just the hard truth. But we're supposed to be PC about it. No, this is our life on the line.
Yeah.
So this the sirens are off. This is not a drill. We need to know this information and we need to start shouting it from the rooftops. So yeah, the system is working the way it needs to, but we just need to, as a community, come together so we can stop the violence against us.
Yeah. That's where I want to. That's kind of where I want to go and kind of start to wrap things up. Right. Here's
Mm-hmm.
my thing. Right. We have been conditioned to look at things a certain way. I kind of tell people this a lot, right? This is something that I'm very passionate about because when we talk about things like credit, there's
Mm-hmm.
so many, like I'll sit down with a client and I'll talk to them about certain ways that things are supposed to be handled as far as disclosure or as far as privacy of their information. And they're like, how is, coach, how is this able to happen? Like, how is this able to happen? Because the system isn't broken. This is how it's supposed to work because they profit off of us being complacent. They profit off of us being comfortable. They profit off of us being able to pay our rent, and that's enough. That's enough for us. Okay, so here's my thing, right? When we talk about, and kind of just to double back on how inflation has infected us, when we talk about insurance, when we talk about healthcare, when things go up, it is hard for us to play, like we're always going to be playing catch up in this game. So like you said, the system is not broken. They are inventing new rules because the second they see us, get a little comfortable, then that's when inflation goes up, or that's when your healthcare goes up, or that's when your home insurance goes up. People can barely afford to insure their home nowadays. People can barely afford to eat healthy nowadays. I went vegan for a few months. I spent so much more money than if I were to just be chilling at the house, cooking regular stuff, right? Just off of that aspect of things, right? We got to understand the system is against you. But guess what? Are you going to let a system beat you, or are you going to use your brain and start changing, right? Are you going to start thinking, okay, everything is a game and you just got to know how to play it, right? Um, and I'll kind of leave it off with this, right? And I want you to do the same thing, Taja, as well. So I want you to give everybody, like we talked about generational curses, we talked about trauma, we talked about, the government shutdown, we talked about our community, how we need certain things. We need entrepreneurs, we need our elders, we need our younger communities, right? We need that balance, right? So I want you to give us a resolution, right? Let's start controlling the narrative. Okay, so I want you to start shifting the narrative. What do you have to tell the average household, the average American, the average Black American? What is your roadmap to help us navigate the pain in business, or navigate the pain in life, or navigate in life, still holding, keeping your head on straight, still having time for your family, and still being able to become an entrepreneur and start building your business? What's that little quick little roadmap and your advice to anybody who's listening to this right now?
Awesomeness. So You need to have a higher power outside of yourself. Who you call your
Yes.
higher power is not my business. However, as a woman who believes in God and His Son Jesus Christ, I'm just saying that's a good place to start if you're interested. That being said, you have got to be able to address the pink elephant in the room. You got to get real with yourself. I'm talking about real, ugly, nasty, real. Know what you are addicted to. If you're an alcoholic, go to AA. Okay, if you gotta sit up here and roll up a left hand cigarette, you know you need help in that area. Okay, you don't need to keep on buying Jordan shoes. That money can start being invested, put back. You know what I'm saying? Um, know how to sit down and have the conversations about the wounds that you're still carrying from a child. Seek the counseling you need. Seek the information. A lot of what's wrong with our community is we rather spend a lot of time looking at, Pop the Balloon Challenge, Zeus Network, this, that, and the third. Get rid of that and start feeding your brain with food that's going to nourish it. That way you can be able to start investing. That way you can be able to start that business. You need to be putting iron sharpens iron, put it into yourself. Get yourself, a handful of great people around you. Know the family members that you need to cut off because not everybody, just because you are DNA does not make you, family. It doesn't. The Bible speaks about a spiritual family. Maybe a spiritual family could be somebody that you are not related to. You have got to get around people who have the same goal in mind as you. Iron sharpens iron. Educate yourself. Hey, you're really smart at knowing how to invest and stuff like that. I'm not really good in that. Can you help me in that area? Well, I have a hard time with trauma and I don't know how to get through. Well, I do good with that. Hello. Looks like a connection to me. You
Right.
got to start knowing who to get yourself around. So that's the roadmap for that. Higher power, start addressing the pink elephant in the room on who you need to let go and what you need to address within yourself so you can get better and have you some people around you that are going to pour into you just as much as you pour into them.
Yes. That was well said. That was well said. And I kind of want to mirror that as well because I want everybody who's listening to this to start understanding this. People who are trying to be successful or they're trying to get to a certain place, right? They all say the same things. Get around people who invest into you just like you invest into them. They all say to eat healthier. They all say to protect yourself and protect your health, protect your wealth, protect your assets. So, what we have to start doing is starting to make that transition. Okay, the transition is always the hardest part. The transition is always the make or break you stage of your career, of your life. Making that transition is going to turn you into a different person. I believe it was I think it was Tony Robbins who said this. If you are willing to go through that sacrifice, you're going to view a certain type of you're going to see yourself in a different light. And if you're willing to go through that sacrifice, right? You're going to see the person that you want to become. You are going to be able to put people in position. You're going to be able to start that business. You're going to be able to scale that business. And this is the way to true freedom. We always hear people sitting on their couch blaming their boss, blaming society, blaming Trump, blaming the lady at the grocery store who cut in front of them, or the other their baby daddy or their baby mama for the reason why they're in their situation. But let me tell you this, right? And I want everybody to start empowering themselves with this one statement. The more you empower your brain, the more you empower your brain, the closer you are to freedom. The more you empower yourself through education, through discipline, and through collaboration, you can find yourself on the other end of the spectrum. Okay, we have to start, like you said, stop putting so much energy into the new Zeus network. Stop putting so much energy into the Netflix show. Stop putting so much energy into gossiping and worrying about what everybody else is doing, going to the club until 4 o'clock in the morning. And I speak from experience, right? But here's what I want everybody to start doing, right? And me and Taja, Miss Taja, we broke down everything that they need to hear about. We broke down everything that they could use. You could use everything that we talked about to start empowering yourself and empowering the people behind you. And putting them up on a pedestal and letting them know like it's only up from here, right? So I want to close out by saying this, right? Everything that you do has to be in furtherance of your future self or the life that you want to build for yourself. Every single day you wake up, move with intention. Every single day you wake up, try and pour into somebody else. Try and meet someone new. Ask someone how they're doing and really want to know how they're doing. And if they're not doing good, ask yourself how you can start helping them. Because like I said, hurt people, but healed people heal people. Like it's a cycle of either destruction or success. All right. So everybody that has watched this episode, everybody who's been kicking it with us for, how long we've been on here? We've been on here for a minute, right? Um, I want you to like, follow, comment, subscribe. Let me know how you feeling about this episode, right? I want you guys to share this and start telling people, like, these are the dinner table conversations that we need to start having. These are the Thanksgiving dinner conversations that we need to start having. All right. Now, with that being said, I want to give you, Miss Taja King, I want to give you the floor. Tell everybody where they can get in contact with you. Tell them your next moves, how they can support your movement, how they can go buy your book. Everybody go get the book, and just let them know where they can, where they can come and kick it with you, and just tell them what you got going on for the future.
Okay, so you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Thread. If you don't know about Thread, I need you to tune in. My Facebook name is Taja King. However, my business name is Empower Potential. Be hungry while wait, grab faith. I thought that was pretty catchy. So you can catch me on there. And that's across all platforms and LinkedIn as well. What I have going on right now, I'm promoting. Can you see this? Can you see this? I'm promoting my book, my memoir. Hope you like. My life a work in progress. So basically right now I'm just into promoting my book. I am trying to gear up to start doing, embarking into life coaching and getting, more so on stage, because iron sharpens iron. And, we definitely need it in our community. That's what I'm doing. I like to talk my stuff on my social medias, so you can, check me out. Man. So yes, that's what I'm up to.
I love it. All right, y'all. So I'm gonna close it out kind of with that, and I want to thank everyone. I want to, again, thank you, Taja, for coming in and just having this productive, beautiful conversation we had, because we talked about a lot. We dove into a lot. We broke a lot of stuff down. We told people about themselves, and we also was able to reflect on our own, on our own issues and our own drive, everything that drives us. We talked about today. So I'm very glad that we were able to have this conversation. I thank God every single day for putting me in position to be, able to speak on what a lot of people don't want to hear about. Right? A lot of people don't, talk about this stuff, especially in our community. So I think it was very important that we talked about the pain in business, that we talked about what it takes to actually break from generational trauma to generational success. So I think that it was extremely important. I love that you were able to come in and speak on things in a different light. You were able to shed a different light on things for your audience and for mine as well. And I would, y'all got to comment. If y'all want Taja to come back on the podcast, put Taja in the comments and let's run this thing up. And like I said, if you want, I'm gonna leave all Taja stuff in the comments below. So if you would love, she got it going on, right? So y'all gotta come in and just start supporting your community, like we talked about. Support your community, collaborate, right? So again, if you guys want to, get in touch with Taja, I'll leave all the links below. And again, this is the Wealthy and Healthy Podcast. It's your host with the K and the Capri, right? I'm Coach K, and I thank everyone for, just tuning in, and I'm gonna catch y'all soon with another episode. We got some big things going on, and this gonna come out soon, and I hope y'all were ready for it. All right. Thank you so much, y'all.